She didn't understand what she had lost when you walked away. You didn't beg her to stay, you didn't try to explain yourself, and you didn't attempt to convince her of your worth. You simply accepted that some things end, and in that quiet acceptance, you revealed a strength she had never seen before. At first, she thought your silence was indifference, that your calm meant you didn't care, and that your lack of reaction proved she didn't matter to you. What she couldn't see was that your silence wasn't emptiness, it was control. Your calm wasn't distance, it was discipline. You weren't cold, you were composed. You were simply a man who had learned that not every storm is meant to be fought. Some storms are meant to be observed until they pass. She was used to noise, arguments that proved passion, dramatic gestures that proved love, emotional highs and lows that made her feel alive. So when she met your stillness, she mistook it for apathy. She didn't understand that your quiet was your greatest power. You didn't chase every disagreement or try to win every fight. You didn't raise your voice to prove a point. You didn't rush to fix what wasn't yours to fix. You understood that peace is not found in control, it's found in letting go. While she was lost in her emotions, you remained centered. While she sought validation from chaos, you found strength in solitude. A Stoic man doesn't control the storm. He becomes the stillness within it. You embodied that truth without words. You didn't try to dominate her emotions or manipulate her perceptions. You simply stood firm in who you were, and at first she was drawn to that. She found safety in your calm, comfort in your steadiness, and a strange peace in your silence. But over time, that same stillness began to challenge her. Peace exposes chaos, and your discipline forced her to face her own restlessness. She wanted intensity, the constant highs that come from unpredictable love, the attention that feeds the ego. But you gave her something she had never experienced before, peace that didn't need to perform. She began to feel uncomfortable with that peace because it required self-awareness. It required her to be still, to face her insecurities without distraction. So she pushed against your calm, trying to provoke a reaction, trying to pull emotion from you that matched her chaos. But you didn't give it to her. You stayed patient, unbothered, grounded, and that frightened her more than anger ever could. She began to tell herself that you didn't care, that you were detached, that you were too calm to love her deeply. But what she didn't realize was that your composure was born from strength, not indifference. You had already learned that real love cannot survive in the presence of constant drama. That true intimacy thrives in peace, not chaos. When you finally walked away, you didn't do it out of pride, you did it out of principle. You refused to lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who couldn't see your value. You left quietly, not to punish her, but to protect your peace. And though she didn't understand it then, one day she would. Because your silence was never weakness, it was wisdom. At first, she convinced herself she had made the right choice. She told herself she needed more passion, more energy, more excitement. She wanted to feel wanted again, to be desired, to be chased. The calm she once had with you felt too steady, too predictable, too peaceful for the version of herself still addicted to chaos. So she found someone new, someone louder, more expressive, more reactive. In the beginning, it felt like everything she thought she was missing. The attention came easily, the compliments flowed freely, and the emotions burned hot. It was thrilling, intoxicating, alive. Every conversation felt electric, every touch filled with urgency. She thought she had finally found the passion you lacked. But slowly, that passion began to shift. The highs that once felt exciting started to feel unstable. The constant attention turned into control, the intensity into tension. Every disagreement became a battle. Every silence became suspicion. She didn't realize it right away, but the very chaos she mistook for love was draining her. What once felt like freedom began to feel like pressure. What once felt like excitement began to feel like anxiety. The very noise she had chased now consumed her peace. And that's when the memories began to return. Not all at once, but quietly like echoes. She started to remember the steadiness of your presence, the way you never raised your voice, the way your silence carried warmth instead of anger, the way your calm could soften even her sharpest moods. She remembered how safe she used to feel sitting beside you, not because of words, but because of energy. Back then she didn't understand it. Now she couldn't find it anywhere else. She realized something that only time and turmoil can teach, that chaos can imitate love, but it can never imitate peace. The new man said all the right things, but his actions were inconsistent. His emotions were reactive, his moods unpredictable. What she once called passion was really volatility disguised as affection. And every time she felt overwhelmed, her mind drifted back to you, the man who could love deeply without losing control. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." She finally began to see that truth in you. You weren't detached. You were disciplined. You weren't emotionless. You were in command of yourself. That realization crept in slowly, in the quiet moments after another argument, another disappointment, another night of restlessness. She began to miss not the version of you she thought she knew, but the one she never fully understood, the man who offered love without demand, attention without obsession, and presence without pressure. Now, what she once called dullness feels like peace. What she once called coldness feels like stability. What she once thought was weakness now feels like power. She starts to see that your calm was never the absence of emotion, it was the mastery of it. And as she faces the noise she chose, she begins to crave the silence she lost. Time passed and life went on, but your absence never really left her. It lingered quietly, not as a memory she could easily forget, but as a feeling that refused to fade. It was in the way her mornings felt different, in the way silence settled heavier at night, in the way she caught herself searching for a kind of presence she couldn't explain. You had become something rare, an anchor in a world that moved too fast. And now that anchor was gone. What she once saw as calm now felt like gravity, and she couldn't find it anywhere else. At first, she tried to fill the emptiness. More distractions, more people, more noise. She went out more, posted more, surrounded herself with attention. But none of it lasted. The laughter faded too quickly. The faces blurred together, and the validation that once felt comforting now felt hollow. Because the truth was, none of it could replace what she had lost. She wasn't missing just a man. She was missing an energy, steady, grounding, disciplined. Your silence had left an imprint that chaos couldn't erase. She began to notice the difference in every conversation she had. The men she met were loud, eager to impress, always performing. They talked too much but said too little. They confused confidence with arrogance, passion with instability. They wanted to be admired, not understood. They wanted control, not connection. And in every one of them, she found the same thing missing. The peace you carried effortlessly. You never tried to be seen. You simply were. Your strength wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It revealed itself in the way you stood firm when others wavered, in the way your silence held more meaning than their promises. You had become a mirror of what real composure looked like. A man who didn't react to prove his worth. A man who didn't chase validation because his value came from within. And that realization began to haunt her. She started to remember how your presence used to calm her, even when you said nothing at all. How you never needed to argue to make your point. How you could sit in silence and still make her feel understood. She began to see that your quiet wasn't absence, it was awareness. Your detachment wasn't rejection, it was mastery. You weren't avoiding her emotions. You were refusing to be consumed by them. Now when the world goes still, she feels it. The echo of your peace, the steadiness of your energy, the space your silence once filled. And in that silence, she starts to understand what she truly lost. It wasn't attention, affection, or romance. It was stability. It was the rare presence of a man who had mastered himself. The kind of presence that makes a woman feel safe without a word being spoken. And once she felt that, everything else now feels temporary, fragile, and uncertain. It always begins quietly, as if the universe whispers her guilt back to her. One day, without warning, she finds herself scrolling through your old photos, reading the words you once sent. wondering how someone so calm could vanish so completely. Then it happens, the small, cautious reach. A message, simple, harmless on the surface. Hey, how have you been? Or maybe just a reaction to your story, a like on something you posted months ago. It looks innocent, but it's not. It's a test, a subtle attempt to see if she still holds space in your mind. She's not looking for conversation. She's looking for validation. She wants to know she can still reach you. But what she doesn't realize is that she's no longer speaking to the same man. The man she once knew, the one who stayed up replaying every word, who wondered what he could have done differently, who held on to hope. That man doesn't exist anymore. The version of you that sought closure has been replaced by the version that creates it. The heartbreak that once shattered you didn't destroy your spirit. It purified it. Pain became your teacher, and silence became your discipline. So when her message arrives, you don't overthink it. You don't read between the lines or analyze her tone. You simply see it for what it is, an echo of the past, not a call to return. There's no surge of adrenaline, no racing pulse, no fantasy of reconnection, only stillness. You reply, if at all, with simplicity, clarity, control. Or maybe you don't reply at all because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. You've learned that attention is a currency, and you no longer spend it where it earns you nothing. She can feel the difference. The energy that once bent toward her now stands firm within you. Your detachment unsettles her because it's real, not rehearsed. She tries again, maybe with nostalgia this time. I saw something that reminded me of you. She hopes to stir a reaction, to remind you of what once was. But your stillness remains. You've stopped chasing the idea of being understood, and in doing so, you've reclaimed your power. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You understand that now. Freedom isn't found in getting her back. It's in knowing you no longer need to. Her words no longer hold weight because you've learned to stand unshaken in your peace. You don't seek closure in her validation because you've built it through self-respect. And when she feels that energy, your quiet confidence, your calm indifference, it shakes her. She realizes your silence isn't a strategy. It's the truth. You've moved on. The same stillness that once made her feel secure now makes her uneasy, because she knows she can't touch you anymore. Not your heart, not your mind, not your peace. And that's when it hits her. She's no longer part of your story. She's just a lesson you've already mastered. Something changed within you after she left, something irreversible and profound. The man who once searched for meaning in her absence began to find it in his solitude. What once felt like loneliness transformed into peace, and what once felt like loss became clarity. You realized that it was never about losing her. It was about finding yourself again. Pain didn't break you, it refined you. Every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every moment of silence carved discipline into your spirit. You began to see that heartbreak wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It wasn't there to weaken you, but to show you the power of stillness. You stopped chasing the version of yourself that needed validation. You no longer looked outward for worth because you began to find it within. The mirror became your compass. You learned to respect your own reflection, not for what it had endured, but for what it had become. The calm you once gave others, you finally gave to yourself. You discovered that peace isn't the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. It's not about being untouched by life, but about walking through chaos and remaining unmoved. That's what true strength feels like, quiet, grounded, unshakable. Your steps became slower, but more deliberate. You stopped rushing to prove your value. You stopped explaining your silence. You realized that those who understand peace don't need an explanation, and those who don't will never hear it through words. You began to speak less, but say more. Your presence started to carry weight, not because you demanded respect, but because your energy reflected self-control. You became a man whose stillness said what his words once tried to. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You lived that truth. You no longer tried to fix what was broken outside of you. You focused on mastering what was within. The world could move, people could change, circumstances could shift, but your peace stayed the same. That constancy became your shield. It made you untouchable, not because you were emotionless, but because you refused to be controlled by emotion. Now, when she thinks of you, it isn't out of anger or nostalgia. It's out of reverence. She remembers the calm she once called boring and now understands it was strength. She remembers your silence and realizes it wasn't distance, it was power. She remembers your detachment and finally sees it was discipline. You became the man she never thought she'd lose because she didn't realize men like you don't wait to be valued. They simply walk away when they aren't. You didn't just move on, you ascended. You grew beyond her memory, beyond her reach. You became what few men ever become, a man at peace with himself, a man whose calm commands respect, whose silence holds truth, whose strength needs no witness. You didn't lose her. She lost the chance to stand beside a man who mastered himself.